we're going to move on to our final panel discussion, advice from the entrepreneurs, women who lead their own security businesses. As with the previous panel, if you have a question for any of our panelists, please record it at any time, and we'll do our best to save some time at the end to answer those questions. The moderator for this session is Sherry Ireland, who is the president of Security Exclusive. So with that, I will turn it over to Sherry, and she will introduce our panelists.
Thank you very much, Neil, and what a great opportunity. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to these amazing women today, and it's been a great session so far. And I just wanted to touch on a few of the nuggets that we've learned today. One is ask people for a digital coffee. There's certainly people in the last panel and in this panel that I reached out to and thought, you sound really interesting. I need to know more about you. So almost everyone will give you an opportunity to have a quick coffee. So that's great. And then the 3 or the 5 things that Miriam talked about was, be authentic. And I certainly know anyone that's running their own business, they have to be. Learn to be resilient. Keep learning. Heard that from not only Miriam, but also that last panel. They talked about credentialing and that sort of thing. Courage, take the leap. And anyone on this panel has absolutely done that. And then make sure that you're taking your downtime. So some really key points that we've learned so far today. And I'm really excited to introduce our panel today. So Antoinette King, CISSP, PSP, has more than 2 decades of experience in the security industry, working in integration, manufacturing, and consulting. Antoinette founded Credo Cyber Consulting in 2020 with the goal of providing her clients a holistic perspective on security, bridging the gap between the physical and cybersecurity domains, focusing on data privacy and protection. Her book, The Digital Citizen's Guide to Cybersecurity, How to Stay Safe and Empowered Online, hit the Amazon's bestseller list for all its categories in the first 48 hours of release. In addition to her consulting firm, Antoinette is currently the Director of Sales for the East and Head of Cyber Convergence at iPro Americas. Antoinette is a 3-time SIA Women in Security Forum Power 100 honoree, 2023 Top 100 Global Women in Cybersecurity honoree, winner of the ASIS 2022 Karen Marquise Award, which is a big one. That's a global award, and winner of the 2022 Cyber OSPA's Best Cybersecurity Consultant Award. Welcome, Antoinette, and thanks for being here today. Our second panelist, Azin Tabrizi, is the CEO of MetScan Canada Limited. It's a security systems engineering firm. Azin's creativity and adaptability stems from her childhood across 3 different continents: Asia, Europe, and North America. She completed her international baccalaureate diploma at Toronto French School and went on to complete her honors Bachelor of Science at U of T, followed by her Science and Technology MBA at Queen's University. Her career began with a focus in biotechnology and strategic consulting. Azin's passion for startups led to her founding of Axon Biohealth, a specialty pharma company focused on health products for underserved women's health markets. This was followed by a role of COO at Vidoen, a social video platform company enabling reliable sources of information from academic experts in various fields. And then in parallel, she joined MetScan, a family-owned business, as a VP. And in 2018, she became the CEO and owner of MetScan Canada. One of her current research and development projects include a trademark patent-pending AI technology that serves the unique needs of MetScan's clients with a solid understanding of growing pains and being a master operator with a strategic perspective. Azin has led MetScan's growth with ease and effectiveness over the past 2 decades. Our third panelist today, Monique Rowland, Inspector Monique Rowland. She is retired now from the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service after a distinguished 32-year career, achieving the highest rank of a female officer in the history of the service before launching her professional consulting and training company. She's providing services to both private and public sector. As a former division commander and investigator, she specialized in major crimes, sexual violence, and crisis and critical incident management, including crisis negotiations. Monique now leverages her expertise focusing on critical incident response, crisis negotiator, crisis de-escalation, and intervention training across North America and Europe. She's co-authored the Canadian Framework for Collaborative Police Response on Sexual Violence and consults on national trauma-informed policing models. Monique is a sought-after speaker at international conferences and contributes to professional development initiatives for emergency management, first responder, health services, and security services. Monique is currently developing a stacked micro-credential program for a post-secondary institution for service providers and security professionals in crisis negotiation and intervention techniques. And the last panelist for today, Tracy Larson. Tracy's a security industry veteran with over 2 decades and as president of WIS, the leading sales management software for security integrators that want to increase profitability, efficiency, and growth. Tracy is a graduate of Cornell University. Career highlights include Global VP Real Estate and Facilities, Computer Associates, President ITG Larson, COO Antarcom, VP Sales Operations and Key Accounts at Diebold. Tracy strives for continued professional development to be an impactful leader. As a successful entrepreneur with extensive corporate leadership experience, her dynamic approach and deep understanding of the security industry, professional selling, and the impact of technology to improve business growth and success makes Tracy a recognized subject matter expert. Tracy is co-chair of Mission 500 and instructor for the Security Industry Association Security Project Manager Certification Program. 2021 SIA Sandy Joe's Volunteer of the Year, 4-time SIA Time Mentor, member of SIA Women in Security Forum Steering Committee, and 3-time SIA Women in Security Forum Power 100 honoree. So welcome to our panel today. So great. Everyone was really busy today. Monique's out in Saskatchewan, Tracy's in Texas, Antoinette almost made it to Texas. And as in, I think you and I are in our home state or province, right? Yeah. So thank you so much for taking your time out today. And I'm just going to kick us right off. What I'd love to see in this panel, as we talked about the other day, is just build and feed on top of each other. And Antoinette, I'm going to start off with you. So what made you decide to set up a business in the first place?
I specifically, my business is around the cybersecurity and physical security convergence. And it really stemmed from an opportunity that I had when working for a manufacturer to speak to in the integration channel about the importance of securing endpoint devices in the physical security industry. I went back to school in my 40s, which is way harder than it is in your 20s. So if you're going to do a master's degree, do it in your 20s. But when I went back to school for cybersecurity, I started seeing things that I couldn't unsee. And I saw that there was a gap in the physical security in terms of how we can support secure implementation of technology. So I founded my consulting firm to support manufacturers and integrators in the security industry to build stronger posture around cybersecurity.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you.
Monique.
Well, I think my path is a little different, but now it's starting to integrate into the security world. And so when I left policing, being that, critical incident commander and having that job where you're sort of switched on 365, 24/7, that doesn't turn off just because you put in your retirement. And I don't think any of the driven women on this panel can see themselves just flicking a switch and turning that off. And so what I struggled with and then was able to find my footing was leveraging the skill sets that I had into all of these private sector industries, which I really didn't have a whole lot of insight in. But as I started my business and it unfolded, there was a much bigger world outside of law enforcement where the skill sets that I had produced all kinds of great deliverables and training for the security industry. Because essentially, the same skill sets that I was able to train for those responders in critical incidents and crisis negotiations translated into the physical security folks who are the front line, essentially, more and more as we privatize with folks in crisis, and then translating some of the emergency operations and emergency management into those emergency operations that stand up in a critical incident.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting, as Carm mentioned in the last panel, she's on the ASIS committee and it's called COP to Corporate. And
Yeah.
you've almost done the opposite, right? You're at the top, and then you're going to be teaching the corporate security side. So, the industries are very, very much intertwined. And tell us about you, and why did you decide to become the owner of your organization?
So it's stepping back to even my childhood. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I think the entrepreneurship was instilled in me at a very young age. My father had businesses across the 3 continents that I moved around as a child, and across many different industry sectors. So I knew when I finished my MBA, it wasn't a matter of when I would start doing entrepreneurial work, it was a matter of when. And in the case of MedScan, it started off as a broadcast engineering professional background, and it coincided exactly at the same time as the security industry, basically transitioning, going from the analog world to the IP world. So it made perfect sense for us to really target that market because we were bringing that broadcast IP knowledge into an industry that was just at the edge of going into it. So, and in the past little while, like I started up as the VP in the last 20 years and then took on as CEO, as an owner. And at that same time, the last year or so, our focus has transitioned from being primarily in the public sector where we've done most of our work to now jumping into the private sector. So that's basically my transitioning. There wasn't much of a transition. I just jumped in with 2 feet, I think, in my case.
Absolutely. And Tracy, tell us about your career, and why do you decided, and you started early in your career, I know that, in starting up your own organization, and pivoted a few times. So tell us about you. Hmm. Is anyone else having an issue hearing Tracy? Yeah.
Is that better?
There we
Is that
go.
better?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I was kind of playing here. I'm dialed in because I thought we might have an issue, but no worries. We know how to solve problems, right? So,
Yeah. 100%.
yeah, so I did have a little bit more traditional background. I think initially I did go right into the corporate world. And I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to work in a place that was extremely challenging, and one that eventually really tested my fiber, my moral fiber. Being able to say, I accept and like what I'm doing here is one thing, but the way that this company is running is another, and how it's treating people. And I learned that in my first business, I saw an opportunity. So I saw an opportunity. I thought, let's just go do this. And I had a grandfather who had his own business, and so I was inspired by him. My first company was called ITG Larson. Isn't this great? And my grandfather's last name. And so it was really to carry forth kind of something that I had grown up with, but my business was very different. I saw a place that small businesses, which make up the majority of what's out there, could not afford to have someone with my skill set and experience. So that business was really set up to offer that kind of work. The second time around, I again found as an integrator, security integrator, that I could see some real issues that were holding back growth and profitability. And so in that case, 2 people I really admired, we decided to create a software company. And that company was really meant to help integrators to have better sales process, ensure profitability through accuracy, and more efficiency for growth. And so I learned a lot from the first business. I've learned a lot from the second. And yeah, that's kind of what got me into it. And the desire to do something different, do something on my own, and win at that, know that I could do it. So.
Yeah, amazing. I hear a common theme across the board here. No great surprise, right? Is seeing an opportunity, but seizing that opportunity, and filling that gap, which is fantastic. So let's start off with the second question and I'm going to ask you this, and we talked about it yesterday, and she's like, meh, I don't really like this question, so go ahead and ask me. So the question is, how do you balance being a mom, a partner, and a business owner?
Yeah, just to give a bit of background to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the reason why I don't like this question is because we never ask a man that question. And I think part of it, Miriam actually touched based on it beautifully. And the fact that, as women, we tend to want to take on everything. We don't realize that being a mom also involves the whole community, a village to raise them and to really tap into those resources to help you out. And what I will say is there's never the perfect balance, and that's okay. You embrace the fact that there are days you're going to feel guilty. There's days you're juggling way too many things at the same time. And at every step of the way, whether you're dealing with a toddler or in my case, an 18-year-old now, and dealing with the teen years, my condolences to anybody out there who's got a teen right now. It's a juggle every step of the way, and how you balance having your business that is a child that needs attention all the time and your actual biological child as well. So with that in mind, I will say at the same time, being your own boss is fantastic. It helps you do that balancing so much better. It's one of those things that people look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so high stress. It's your own business. Yeah, it does have its moments, but it does help you achieve that balance so much better in the sense that, your time is you decide how to juggle it. And, I've been able to be involved in my child's school quite a bit. I was the PA president for several years at the Parents Association there. I was able to volunteer and be really involved at the same time as going a business, because when I was taking time off of work, I was just making it up on the weekend or in the evening. I had that flexibility. And when you have an employer, they might not necessarily understand that flexibility or want to have the ability to give you that flexibility for that matter. So I would say, if anything, start your own business. It actually works out quite well as a working mom.
That's awesome. That's an awesome answer. And talking about that particular question, I was of the era where I had bosses that asked me that question, do you plan on having kids? And, you really had to think about how you're going to answer that, because that might have meant you were not going to get the next promotion. And I think thankfully we may be past that era, and not all of us have kids. I have stepkids, but I don't have any of my own. So just want to clarify that with this particular question. And it was my question, by the way. So
Oh no.
Antoinette, I know that you have a son as well.
Yeah, I have two sons. One is going to be 21. The other one's about to be 18. And I agree with Azin. I feel like it's frustrating for us because there's so much pressure put on us as the primary caregiver of children, as well as, wanting to, we're all driven women on this panel, right? So we're driven to do something bigger than just what we have in our nuclear family. And there are people that are built that just want to be within the nuclear family, which is a blessing and beautiful. And I commend that. I wasn't built that way, but I am of the mid generation, right? Where I was still programmed to take everything on myself. So in the early part of my career, I'm, in this industry for 24 years. In the early part of my career, I put on hold a lot of the growth that I'm doing now because I felt compelled to stay local, to make sure that I was able to pick my kids up. And at the time, my husband was in law enforcement, so he was not reliable 12-hour shifts to be able to do the things that needed to be done when the kids, wanted to go to sports or religion or whatever it took, right? So, but I did still work full time. And so I had preschool care, after school care, and it's a lot of stress, and it carried a lot of guilt. The benefit of some of that is that my children are super well adjusted because they were raised by the community, right? We had close family members, and then, daycare, and then after school care. They got to be socialized amongst other people. So I think that for them, it was a blessing because they were able to be socialized. For me, sometimes I still bear the guilt of not being there for certain things. But, we all have our own journeys. And I think being a business owner, I agree with you, provides you the ability to make your own schedule and to be able to, be there for the kids when you need to be there for the kids. So I'm right now in a position where I'm sunsetting the mom 100% of the time needs, and now I'm kind of just a supporting actor in my children's lives, which is kind of an interesting transition. But I do definitely appreciate what Evan said. You know, we just don't, there has never been a panel where a man is asked, how do you balance being a dad and, you know, owning a business? It's still challenging, and people still question me about that. They still ask me, you know, how do you show up? It's just the same way everybody else shows up. And I think the important thing here is that we need to recognize that it's okay to ask for help. I was programmed that I need to do it all. To me, asking for help was a weakness. And now I recognize that asking for help is a strength, it's a superpower. Knowing your limitations so that you can show up and be the best person that you are rather than burn yourself out. So we need to, as we raise the next generation of young professional women, we need to make sure that they understand that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say no. That's the other thing I didn't know how to do, was say no, right? So it's okay to say no. It's okay to ask for help. And that's how you balance anything in life, right? And understanding boundaries and being able to set boundaries. Again, I was never taught that. It was always, I just had to be there for everyone and do everything and be the best at all of it, right? So, but yeah, I do appreciate the fact that the questions has a little bit of a sting to it.
100%. 100%. Anything you want to throw in there, Monique or Tracy?
You know, I grew up obviously in law enforcement. I feel your pain, Antoinette, and I didn't have the option of saying no. You don't have the option. And if you do say no, it completely hamstrings your ability to progress. So promotions don't exist for someone who's not available 24/7. And so there was no balance. And my son at 2 and 3 years old knew what a call out was. He would say, call out mommy at 2 in the morning, when I would throw him in the car seat, because I had a supportive network of people who would take him. So there was no balance. And he's a very well-adjusted independent 23-year-old who, you know, we felt guilty. And yes, I had the baby monitor in my hood and snowblowed the driveway at 11 o'clock at night, because that was the only time. And we just do what we do best. And that ability to never say no and work harder for less recognition and balance it, and maybe not balance it, but take it all on, is what makes us the driven, successful business owners now, because we had the hard knocks. And you're right, no one would ever ask a guy that question.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to all of that, because I also was of the era where you literally, as you know, a new mom or someone who was thinking about becoming a mom, would not openly discuss that at work for fear of many things, yes, but definitely of moving up. Today, I think that it's great. We actually have a lot of flexibility. We have laws that protect us. That has been a big change. We have a recognition. I think there's been a shift in what used to be called the personnel department to truly being HR and human resources. And so we've got, you know, early in my career, I was at a corporation that was extremely hard to work at, but one of the things we did was we designed and built daycare, childcare facilities that allowed 6 weeks right up through kindergarten to be at the facility where mom and dad worked. And so I think those are the kinds of things that offer, you know, the kind of support. There's a support that is among your family, your friends, but there's also a support that's needed at your workplace and by the people you work with and for. The other thing I would say is that I think as female entrepreneurs, another really important aspect of balancing work and life is that whoever your significant other is, if you have one, that person you need to be very clear with. And, you know, they have to understand your dream. They have to understand your tenacity and your work ethic and everything else. And sometimes that gets very tested. And so there are times you got to sit down and work through that too. But I also think that it's easy to become very, very work centric and not take the time that is needed to play in your life. And I think play is a really important part of life. It's something that will build a better you for you to show up in your business and in your work. And so I think that, you know, I know I think of it differently now because I have more experience in my life. I would say quiet the voices of fear and, be willing to expose yourself to say, I need something different. I need to do this. It's okay. You have plenty of time. And yes, you may make a choice that is going to forego getting a contract, for instance, but you will hopefully be in the position where that contract is not the only fish in the sea. And you can recognize that there are times that you need to make choices that are really critical for you. And that will build you better and build your business better.
Great discussion. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to make sure that we don't actually miss this question. So I'm going to shake it up a little bit, and let's talk about what advice would we give and impart to other women who are considering starting their own security businesses. Who would like to start with that question?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think we are really pigeonholed in our, maybe in my case, in public sector environment, to not recognizing that your skill sets are transferable all across other industries. And that if you're good at one thing, you're not good at others. Those skill sets, you have to start thinking outside the box, and you have to grow your network, and you have to be open to ideas, because my business would have never grown if I hadn't been open to someone saying, do you know, you've done something like this before. Do you think that you could do this? And your immediate answer is, well, no, that's really not what I do on a daily basis. It's not. It's expanding and changing the way that you talk to yourself. Mm-hmm. And the messaging that you've been maybe given has to change. Is that, yeah, I'm willing to take those risks. I'm willing to try. I'm certainly going to learn, and I'm going to leverage all of those experts that are in my life to see how I can leverage my skills. And that's why I was able to be successful in industries that really I had not a whole lot of idea that how I could contribute to.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things that we need to make sure that any new business owner understands is that if you're good at a particular thing, right? A lot of people think that they're expert at something, so then they can go make a business out of it. And what we fail to remember is that there are so many other parts of business that we need to make sure that we understand and learn. So making sure you're educated and you're informed about what it takes to build a business and all of the other aspects around business ownership that are important. When I went out on a whim, and I didn't understand, bookkeeping, and there were so many other things that had to be done that in my head it was, and I'm a smart woman, and my dad owned businesses, and I knew that there were things, but everybody else always took care of that stuff. Now you're on your own. And so you need to really develop the skill sets around entrepreneurship and business ownership, rather than just thinking about what is the skill that I have that is marketable, right? Even the marketing part of it, I'm not a marketer. And so understanding how to properly build your brand, use your network, and then all of the administrative stuff around business also is really, really important. In the security industry in particular, there are so many rules and regulations around how you can do business, and licensure and certifications and things like that. So just making sure you do your research as to how you're going to enter the industry and what the things that you're going to need around business, because most businesses fail in the first and second year, not because their products or offerings are not good, but all of the business aspects are not really set with a strong foundation.
I would add to that, and I think those are all terrific points. I think most of us probably have gone through many of the same incident. But I would also tell you, so when I started WIS, it was 2008, and we had a huge economic downturn right after I started. I left a job that I was extremely secure in. I made a lot of money, and I walked away from it because I felt we had a really good solution to offer to businesses that could use it. And one of the things I faced, and I had planned for 12 to 18 months without a salary. Okay. I had that, at least I had that in my, in my head. And it turned out that I didn't take a salary for 4 years. Okay. And so you have to be willing to, do what it takes to support yourself and whoever else is part of you. And you have to be willing to do that to the tune of your belief in what you're doing being strong enough that you'll say, I will go get another job here or there, whatever I have to do. I did all kinds of things, cutting back. I faced my music because I believed in what I was doing. And there were dark, cold days. There were many people I knew in this industry who said, hey, we know you, we like you, we know you did good work. You may not be here next year. And you have to be able to face that, hear it, and say, I'm going to be here. That was my response all the time. The second thing I'd tell you is go out and interview, take at least 10 people, some entrepreneurs, some in business, and interview them and tell them what it is you think you want to do, why, and then get their feedback and listen to it. You're going to get a real mix. You're going to get people that are like, no way, don't do it. And you're going to get people that are very encouraging. I had someone who said to me, it's going to take 3 years to make the phone ring. And that was really cold water in my face. Many people think they're going to make $1 million tomorrow. It's not going to happen. Okay. Let's face it and understand it takes guts. It takes commitment, perseverance times 100. Whatever you think you got is going to take more, but that's okay. If you really believe in it, then, you'll be able to see it through and do it. The last thing I would say is you have to be willing to take your product and service ideas and understand that what you thought may not be what is needed or how a customer sees it. They may show you something else that's really good, all right, and helps you to see from another perspective. So to keep it short, be willing to change and be willing to look at things from different perspectives and be curious and ask why they think that. And just be willing to say, I'm not stuck on something. You've got to make sales. You have got to make sales. And that's really critical. A lot of people get stuck because they're trying to perfect their product or their service. And they waste a whole bunch of time versus getting it out there and helping other people to tell you, this is what this is all about. So those are a couple of those quick points.
Just to add to that, I think there is coming from an entrepreneurial world of pharma and then coming into the security industry, there's for sure a lot of similarities to being entrepreneurial across different industry sectors. And I think you guys touched base on it beautifully. I mean, there is the risk component, the financial component of it. Like you have to be willing to put in the blood, sweat, and time and not earn a dollar for quite a while. You have to be willing to have that ability to change and not be stubborn because you believe the service is fantastic and that's the end all of all. And having the right group of people around you. You're only as good as your team. You're not alone, whether that is a mentorship group, whether that is the interviews you were mentioning, Tracy, of like people who are in the industry, other entrepreneurs. Soak up all of that information and have that vision, but have that flexibility at the same time. I think those are very critical components. And in particular for the security industry, I have to say, coming from pharma, which is much more 50-50 for male and, women and men, coming to the security world, it was a big shocker for me. And I have to say, please, the women that are on this call, really consider coming into the entrepreneurial aspect of the security world and hire women. Give them that flexibility they need for their work-life balance that we're all seeking, and we've all gone through those pains, and change the industry as a whole, because any industry, as we all know, diversity is what makes it succeed. And there's not enough women in this industry. And for us to be creative, for us to grow as an industry, we need more of you involved and more of you willing to take this risk and tap into the network of women who've gone through it and learn from it. And would be loving to embrace you all to come on board, I would say.
Yeah, that's great advice. I certainly learned that too when I left my corporate role and started my organization, and I had to pivot. to your point, right? All of you said that, and it's like, okay, I've got exactly what I think everyone needs. And they're like, nope. It's like, right. So I pivoted a few times, and I think you need that, right? You need to be brave, and you have to be willing to pivot if what you think you're offering is not what people want. And the other really important thing that you said, and all of you said it, was network. And find out if your idea is a good idea. Don't be afraid of someone stealing it. You have your trusted network. Find out, get their honest feedback. And your friends, your business associates will tell you if you're on the right track or not. And let's touch on as in you actually touched on it there and talking about women in the security industry. And I'm just going to throw this out to the rest of the panel as well. And it's a little bit different than being the entrepreneur, but I'm going to steer us that way and say, how should we ensure that women are prepared, and not only that, but promoted to senior leadership roles? And Monique, that applies to you in policing as well, right? The same struggle in the security side happens in the policing world. How do we get women ready for that?
Yeah, I would say, again, as an entrepreneur, I've made a concerted effort to hire women. I'll be very upfront about that. And 70% of my management right now are women, and 52% of my employees are women. And I think part of it is because I literally, as I said, it was a shock going into a lot of this corporate meetings at an executive level. Well, I was the only woman in the room over and over and over again. And that was very concerning because, again, as I mentioned, the diversity that's needed around that meeting room and is not going to give us the creative solutions that you need to grow whatever is being discussed strategically at that meeting. So I think, like, in order to encourage women to go into this industry, whether it's if you're in a hiring capacity, really make that concerted effort to look at those female candidates and provide them the mentorship that they need to get to where they need to go. Provide them the flexibility. I think one of the issues with the security industry is this 24/7 nature of our business. That is a major turnoff for a lot of women wanting to go into the field, thinking that there's no way they're going to have that work-life balance they want to be having. And being very clear to, first of all, going into the interview as a potential candidate, request that, ask for that. Don't be scared to ask those questions. And then from an employer perspective, provide that flexibility. Because believe it or not, when you provide that flexibility, then you're hiring a much better pool of candidates are going to be available to you than when you don't offer that flexibility. And I found that when I do offer that flexibility, is I've hired some of the most key component team players in my group that are go above and beyond, and they give you the loyalty. The loyalty and retention comes on board when you offer that flexibility to your staff.
Absolutely.
So it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
I agree. Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say that I think that, men are good at promoting themselves. Men are good at, you touched on before, sometimes women think I don't have the skill set. And men are the opposite. Whether they have the skill set or not, they're stepping into it. And so we have to do that. We are smart people. We can learn and we can find the resources. I think that, one of the things I've been really thrilled to see is that I teach the security project management classes for SIA. And I have seen, and I did one in Canada just 6 months ago, City of Toronto sponsored it. You wouldn't believe how many women now are sitting in those classes. That is extremely, encouraging to us. The other thing, you were asking about how we help women move up. There are so many ways. I look at today where I am now, and one of the things that's helped me to feel really good about my choices and being here in this industry is volunteering and getting out and saying, I'm a time mentor. I now have my 4th mentee coming. Each one, in my case, has been female. They have been fantastic. I've gotten more from them than they've gotten from me, for sure. And I'm watching them. I see the advancements they're making. It is hard work, but you know, you have to get out there and do it. The other thing I would say is because we have the Women in Security Forum, part of SIA again, and we've done like Security Leader was the first conference last year, and it's coming back strong this year. There is a need. We see the need. We have committees within Women in Security Forum. I am co-chairing one on female entrepreneur, you know, so we have tools today that were 100% not even a twinkle when I started here. Most of the women when I started in this industry were there with a significant other or working in a show in a booth or something like that, but literally hired for the show. And today that's much, much different. We have to understand that we've got to put ourselves in those places too and encouraging others. And I found that when I need help, I've got plenty of women here to help me. And, you know, we've got to take advantage of that as women. And I do want to say there are plenty of men who help us too. Mm-hmm. So find those people to promote them and make sure that, you know, you're passing that torch along to someone else. Whether or not you understand her skill set, it doesn't matter. You know, we're here to help and lift each other up.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, Tracy. That was something that I was going to just touch on, is the notion of male allyship. We need to be able to rely on our male counterparts to recognize the traits in women that that are needed for leadership roles. When I was supposed to be at PSA Tech today to present, that there's another session called Beyond a Seat at the Table. And I'm going to steal a little something that I was going to talk about in that session and kind of impart it here. But and actually one of the male panelists brought it up in a prep call, and he said, you know, when I deal with my counterparts in leadership that are men, oftentimes they're there because they were in the right place at the right time. When I deal with female counterparts in the same capacity, typically they have more competence. I recognize, because they have to work so much harder to be seen, to be selected, because there's such a larger pool of men. Women typically have more competence in the roles in leadership. And he wasn't saying it to knock his male counterparts. He was simply saying that because it is harder for women to recognize the traits within themselves, they work twice as hard to be in the role. And to Tracy's point, it's not a knock against women or a knock against men. That's how we're biologically wired. Women think that they need to have 100% of the skill set. That's scientific. It's based on research. 100% of the skill sets to apply for a role. Men can have 50% and think they're going to be awesome at the role. And so we need to remember that we have to tap someone on the shoulder. Women have to be asked to be invited. We oftentimes won't volunteer ourselves or won't put ourselves in the spotlight. I built my personal brand starting about 6 or 7 years ago with SIA because a male counterpart said, you have something that is special and people need to hear your story. And he legitimately pushed me into the spotlight. I was not comfortable with that. I wasn't comfortable being on webinars. I wasn't comfortable speaking in front of people. But he said, you have a compelling story and you need to go out there and tell that story because there are other women that need to hear it. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, all right. And I straightened my crown and I got out there. So I really want to make sure that we recognize the men in the industry that are such champions for women for us today. I was a technician when I started. I was legitimately, for 6 years, the only woman on a job site. And the things that transpired during that were terrible. And so I want to make sure that never happens again. So it's incumbent on us as women who are in leadership now to pave that way and make sure that the younger generation of women recognize that they do have the skill set and they should volunteer and they should show up and they should raise their hand because they can do the jobs.
Really, really powerful, Antoinette. And Monique, we're short on time, but I want to hear your part, and go ahead.
To Antoinette's point, when we're talking about promotion in some of these industries, there are a series of barriers, regardless of how skilled you are, that are consistently preventing women, they're gender-based and they're systemic, without being overt. And so to Antoinette's point, if we are competing for promotion, one, we think we have to be almost overqualified, but systems don't pit They pit us with systemic barriers in that we don't tend to be competing against the men for these coveted positions. They're pitting us against each other. So if there are 5 positions available and 3 women are competing, we know that we're competing against the other women. So because of some skewed diversity, policy, whether they want a woman in that position, I should be competing against 5 competent people.
Right.
Yet I'm not. And that's systemic. And then when you do get to some of those positions, there are so many barriers. We have to stand up and mentor and break those barriers and work with the men and our allies to prevent them. Because what we found and what I have found is there are not that many barriers for competent women. There are too few barriers for incompetent men. And so, and I know that can be inflammatory, but when we break it down and think about it, there are supporting allies and they are gender-based, supporting allies who provide opportunities to those high flyers, who provide those opportunities to demonstrate their capabilities. And they're often not provided to their female counterparts. Just because, and I come from very much that kind of networking in my former industry. So every opportunity that I get, I will give the opportunity for to break down the systemic barriers and give those opportunities to show the skill set and the high flyers where they can succeed. And if I can mentor that, I will take every opportunity to do that, to just challenge those systemic barriers and provide those opportunities and ensure that there are fewer barriers to our female colleagues.
Great discussion today. And Neil, let me throw it back over to you. And that was really powerful. I could feel the emotion. We really got into it there. So that's a great panel for sure.
Yes, thank you, Sherry. And I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. A really fascinating discussion. I'm sure this panel could go on for another 20, 25 minutes, no problem. But I appreciate all your input. It's really, I appreciate the time you spent with us today and all the wisdom that you're sharing with our attendees.